Good evening to everyone. Good evening to our friends in Australia. I would like to share a few thoughts with you regarding the Memorial Day of the assassination of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. A few days ago, I was interviewed by the Rabin Center about people and movements that were affected by the murder of Yitzhak Rabin. And so I was one of the organizations that was elected to describe the impact that the murder of Yitzhak Rabin has influenced us as people, as a movement. Well, it's hard to describe, it's almost like today, it's hard to describe how the split was so deep between the tribes of the Israeli society. A few days after the murder of Yitzhak Rabin, observant people were perceived as a collective, as a tribe, for responsibility for the murder of Yitzhak Rabin. People were ashamed to walk in the streets. Bus drivers threw out religious boys and girls that went and wanted to join the journey in the buses. People were concerned that maybe what the Arabs didn't succeed by the wars against the state of Israel, the external threat was never so successful as the internal one. People felt that we are just one step before the destruction of the third Temple Mount. And that's exactly was the formula, the precise formula for self-destruction, that we are so experts in doing that to ourselves. And that's when Tzohar was established, a group of young rabbis that decided that we will not let this happen again. We want to try to bridge the gaps between societies. What we have started was to launch a small project of weddings. We felt that the relationship between observant and non-observant people suffered a lot from religious coercion, and then we decided we ought to soften this tension. We ought to soften the strain between the tribes. I think that today we face exactly the same situation. When we see what's going on today in Israel, where each tribe accuses, blames the other one for responsibility for not dealing correctly with the corona. And by the way, I could think that none of them is wrong. We have a lot of criticism towards those who do not obey to the instructions, to the orders, and do not cover themselves, their faces with masks, that we do not keep social distance, that pray against the rules, that do not pay attention to all the instructions. And I have a lot of what to say to those people in the Haredi tribe that do not behave as they should. On the other hand, I could fully understand those who maintain, how could you make riots and demonstrate and not keeping their social distance? And what about the beaches in Tel Aviv? And what about here and what there? The same thing that occurred then occurs today again. You know, there is a Jewish tradition that on the holy holidays, we knock on our chest and we say, it's our responsibility, it's our fault, we did not behave ourselves. But what happens sometimes is that we prefer to use our fist to knock on somebody else's chest. And that's exactly what happens. And what Tzohar was trying to do then, and trying to do today as well. Let each one of us take responsibility for himself. Just as we have done 25 years ago, when we said to ourselves, it's not enough to say that we are not responsible, not directly, not indirectly to the murder. We have to ask ourselves, what is our part in not having the secular people feel comfortable in Israel? What do we have to do better to improve our approach, to change our approach, to improve our services, to improve our attitude to our colleagues, to our brothers and sisters? And the same thing occurs today. We have to ask ourselves, what is our duty? What is each one of us has to ask himself in his community, in his family, in his tribe, what is his duty in order to make sure that this threat that is above everybody and that threatens everybody and doesn't differentiate, doesn't distinguish between observant and non-observant, Jews and Arabs, Jews and non-Jews, left and right. How do we stand together against this threat and not wasting our time accusing each other? I want to say one more thing. I know that the Jewish community in Australia is a lot based on people that are Holocaust survivors. You know, when I read this story to youngsters, when I take them every year to Poland, and I read this paragraph that describes in the Warsaw Ghetto how Jews in the undergrounds, until the last days of the rebel against the Germans, still were fighting between themselves on the credit. Who will have the credit on losing to the Germans? Who will be remembered in history? And I ask myself, don't we learn something from Jewish history? It happened to us in the Second Temple. It happened to us in the undergrounds before 48, when the undergrounds fought against each other. It happened to us in the Warsaw Ghetto, in other places. Will it happen to us again now? And that's exactly the meaning of the murder of Yitzhak Rabin. One group doesn't understand that once the people gave the authority and the responsibility to a prime minister, although it's nice that he would consult with everybody, but that's not the way democracy works. And once the prime minister decides something, that's the decision. If it was approved by the government, by the parliament. The fact that one group could not understand that we live in a democratic country and the prime minister and the government has the authority to decide to take decisions, even those that kind of decisions that harm others. That's the meaning of self-destruction. Once we don't know how to use the rules in order to lead our country, in order to conduct our country in the way we should need to conduct it. It's not less than discretion of the name of God. When the Jewish people show to the entire world that they don't know how to run a country, they don't know how to run a kingdom. That's exactly what happened to us in the first temple's destruction, when Gedaliah ben Achikam, that was nominated by the Babylons as the leader, and he was murdered because there were people who did not like the way he led the people. That led to the exile to Babylon, into Egypt, 2,500 years ago. That's exactly what could happen to us in the modern history if we would not stand together to understand that despite all the differences, despite all the disputes that exist, and I don't want to ease them and to soften them, there are sharp debates and big split, and it's legitimate. That's the character of human being, especially it's the character of the Jewish people. That's more than legitimate. I expect each one to express his position in the sharpest way, as long as we understand that we are a part of one united nation that has to take decisions eventually. That's exactly what could destroy us 25 years ago. And thank God, we stood up, all Jewish people, and understood that this could not happen again, and we should not let it happen again. Tzohar is one of the big organizations in Israel that was established as a result of that murder, took a decision. We will never let politics to split the Jewish people to tribes. We will never let the fact that people have different opinions to create situation that we will have to decide what do we prefer, the unity of the Jewish people or the unity of the Jewish state. We understand that these both are depending on each other. So to summarize my short speech to you, our colleagues in Australia, I want to wish all of us that the lesson from that bitter and terrible murder was learned by all tribes, that we understand that today, despite all the differences and all the different approaches, how to deal with Corona, how to deal with the current government, and how to deal with different issues, we will learn the message that we will not let that happen again. We will not let a political murder to occur again. We will not let a self-destruction of the Jewish state to happen again. That's the message that we in Tzohar are committed to, we're obligated to, and we'll try to do our best in order to deliver and to convey this message to the entire Jewish people in Israel and in the diaspora. Thank you so much.